Hi. We talked last lesson about the UNIDO investment program and how the objective is to support national investment promotion agencies and governments in using analytical tools to formulate better investment policies, investment promotion strategies, and to support investors in making more informed investment decisions. And in that lesson, we talked about the investment monitoring platform as a tool that UNIDO has prepared to help the various users perform those functions. Today, we're going to talk about the overview of the investment monitoring platform. The outline of the course will consist of demonstration of the IMP, where we will show you how a user can enter the IMP and access the database that's behind the IMP and generate reports and charts using that data for various objectives. We'll then show some results from Africa. Now, the investment monitoring platform has been designed to be used in different countries and different regions. We piloted it in Africa, in 19 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and that is the tool that I will demonstrate here, but it is available to be used as we expand the program to other regions and countries. We have already included some countries in Asia, starting with Vietnam, and we'll also be introducing the IMP in North Africa and the Middle East, the Caribbean, and Latin America. Then we'll show how the IMP can be used as a tool for partnership promotion. After showing how the IMP is a tool for data analysis, research, policy advocacy, we will show how companies can access the platform and use it as a business platform to identify business partners, joint venture partners, suppliers, buyers, and to use it as a platform to promote themselves so that internationally companies looking for buyers or suppliers can identify them according to search criteria, and they can put the information about themselves, their product, photos, etc., straight on the platform, and they can be found, and through that website they can manage their own company-to-company relations. So let's start with the demonstration of the investment monitoring platform. Basically, what we're going to show is how do I query the IMP's database? How can we investigate questions using the data? How can we investigate questions, for example, on are we giving the right incentives to the right companies? Are the incentives we give actually impacting on investor decisions to expand their operations? Are the investors in the sectors that we want to prioritize seeing our country as a competitive site? Or companies can use it to answer questions like, which countries are giving the most best conditions for investors in my sector? What is the growth rate of investments in my sector in different countries, etc.? So we will demonstrate how the monitoring platform can be used to answer such questions. Before I get into it, let me just give you a little demonstration of what is the data that's in the platform. As we mentioned, currently for the Africa platform, we have from 19 countries close to 7,000 companies. And from these 7,000 companies, we have about 700 to 800 variables. And these variables cover these three areas: investor characteristics, performance measures, and investment impact indicators. In terms of characteristics, we're looking at size of the company, size in terms of employment, assets, or sales, motivation to invest, whether they're coming for local market or to set up an export platform, market orientation, whether they want to do local marketing, export to the region or global, ownership, whether the company is completely domestically owned or it's a joint venture between foreign and domestic companies or wholly foreign owned, investor origin by country, by region, and we also look at comparisons between investors from industrialized countries, we group as North, and other developing countries, we group as South. These include investors from Asia, other African countries, Latin America, etc. We also look at the type of organization. Is it a transnational corporation, which is setting up a subsidiary in a country? Or is it a foreign entrepreneur that's moving to a country and setting up an operation? We call FEs. Or is it a diaspora investor, a former national that's coming back to set up a business? And of course, we also look at the sector at two-digit ISIC level. In terms of performance, we look at profit rates, growth rates in terms of investment, employment, sales, and exports, capacity utilization rates, past and future investment, how much recent investment they've done and what new investment they're planning to make, labor and capital productivity, and input costs. In terms of impact indicators, we're looking at how much employment they're generating, what wages they're paying, how they're interacting with local partners, how much local content they have, how much they interact with suppliers to help suppliers develop their products and processes, how much they spend on training to develop skills, how much they spend on R&D and adaptation, how much technology transfer they undertake, and how much taxes they pay. So those are the basic categories we look at. And what I will show you now is how you can manipulate the site to do analysis in a number of ways. To do that, we go to the platform. The platform is at this web address, investment.unido.org. Once you enter that, you log in with a password, and now you have access to all the data that's in the website. And you can analyze the data using a number of tools: frequency charts, pie charts, bar charts, bubble charts, heat maps, etc. Or you can download the raw data and use it with a statistics software. The histograms, frequency charts, allows you to analyze the structure of the database that's on the platform. So for example, you would see the number of companies that has been surveyed in each country. So you have for Uganda 814 companies, for Kenya 615, for Nigeria 587, and at the other end of the spectrum you have Malawi, Burkina Faso, and Niger with 131, 123, and 102 companies. And you can analyze the structure of the database by country, by sector, by size, by origin, etc., etc. So you can do a number of analysis by choosing from this axis any variable you want to look at. Let's look at something more interesting. Let's look at the bar charts. Now, bar charts allows you to, again, query the data by any variable you choose, but this time on the y-axis you can choose from a number of variables. So here we have current assets. So by country we are looking at the average size of the companies in each country in terms of asset value. And we see that Kenya has the biggest companies. And again, if you hover over a bar with your mouse, it gives you the values. So Kenya, we have 580 companies, and the average size of these companies in terms of asset value is 15 million. The second biggest average size is in Senegal, and we have 200 companies from Senegal with an average asset size of about 11 million, and so on. You can now look from here and choose a number of variables to investigate. You can, for example, say, let's look at growth rates. Then you can do a text search, put in growth, and then it asks you, do you want to look at sales growth? Do you want to look at employment growth? Do you want to look at export growth? Let's look at export growth, and you pick either mean or median, accept. And now we're looking at export growth in the different countries, and we see that the biggest growth rates are in Mozambique and Burundi. And we have a negative growth rate in terms of export growth in Niger. Now you may say, okay, I don't want to look by country, I want to look by sector. So we choose from the x-axis our variable sector. We look at ISIC, International Standard Industry Classification. Now we see agriculture sector. We have 105 companies from the agriculture sector with an export growth of 30%. We have transport sector, and the biggest growth is post and telecommunication with 84%. And we have electricity and gas and water with 64%, and high-tech manufacturing with 52%. You may say, okay, let's look at sales growth. And we want to look at not all the countries that's in the database, but we're interested in a certain set of countries. We're interested in looking at, say, the East African community. So we can then select a filter, go to country codes, and we select the 5 countries from the EAC: Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Uganda. Accept. So now we're only looking at the 5 countries in the EAC in terms of sales growth in the different sectors. We may say, okay, we want to look at only manufacturing. So we then go to main sectors, and we see now a more detailed breakdown of all the sectors. And if you're interested in narrowing this down a little further, you may go back to the filter and say, I want to also filter for only manufacturing sectors. So we click manufacturing, accept. So now we have only the manufacturing sectors, only in the East African community, and we're looking at the sales growth rates. Now you may say, but I want to compare the sales growth rates between domestic and foreign companies for these sectors. You can do that too. You can go to a comparison series selector, and you say, let's distinguish by ownership. And we choose ownership structure, domestic, foreign, accept. Now each bar is broken up into two, a foreign component and a domestic component. And you can visualize each one individually. And we see, for example, that in the leather sector, tanning and leather sector, domestic companies are growing sales much faster than foreign companies. On the other hand, let's look at this one. In publishing and printing, foreign-owned companies are growing much faster than domestic-owned companies. In manufacture of food and food products, they're about even, about 35% growth in sales for both domestic and foreign. So you can do this sort of analysis at any level you like, and you can look at performance of sectors in terms of growth rates, in terms of capacity utilization, in terms of investments that have been recently made, in terms of new investments that companies are planning to make, in terms of how companies benefit from services that are provided by national entities, IPAs, etc. So hundreds of different levels of analysis can be done using this bar charts. Now, if we go to bubble charts, it gives us an even more in-depth look at the database. Let's look at our starting point here. What the bubble chart does is it uses a pivot selector. In this case, we've selected ownership structure for the pivot to subdivide the data set into groups. And we've subdivided into foreign-owned companies and domestically owned companies. So this bubble represents all the foreign-owned companies, and this bubble represents all the domestically owned companies. The size of the bubble we've selected here to be the size of the average company in terms of assets. Again, you can select many different variables here to represent the size. So we see that the foreign companies, average, are larger than domestic companies. Now we have two axes, the x-axis and the y-axis, where you can select different variables. We've selected, in this case, the average employment growth rate in terms of percentage. So we see that foreign companies are growing employment at a faster rate than domestic companies. And we have, in the y-axis, planned new investments in US dollars. So average foreign company is planning to invest more than the average domestic company. So it gives you a visual picture of how two groups you can select differ from each other. And by hovering with the mouse over each bubble, you get all the values in a pop-up chart. So you see here that we have 2,200 foreign-owned companies. The average size is $1.9 million in assets. The average growth rate of employment is 9%, and the average planned new investment is about $5.5 million. And similarly, you can do the same for domestic companies, and you have about 4,000 domestic companies with an average size of $600,000, with an average employment growth rate of 8.6%, and average planned new investment of $2.5 million. Now you can say, okay, this is interesting, but I'd like a little bit more depth. I'd like to see these companies in terms of, pick something, say market orientation. Now you can choose a variable here to break up each bubble into different components. So let's look at orientation, market orientation. Market orientation. Now what that'll do is break up each bubble into three components. companies that service the domestic national market, local market-seeking companies, which are the blue ones. So these are companies that are only selling to the local national market, the foreign ones and the domestic ones. And again, you see a similar pattern. The foreign companies are slightly bigger, they grow their employment rate slightly higher, and they plan to invest slightly more than domestic companies. If we look at global exporters, in terms of global exporters, the foreign companies are much bigger. They're planning to invest much more. In this case, an average of $13 million. In this case, an average of $4.5 million. And again, the domestic companies are smaller and grow slower than the foreign companies. Let's look at the third group, the regional market-seeking companies. We see a difference. In this case, the domestic companies are growing much faster in terms of both employment and investment than foreign companies. Now, we have identified an interesting group of domestic companies that export to the regional markets that grow very fast. We can say, hey, that's an interesting group. Can we look at that a little closer? Yes. We go, we click on that bubble, and then it gives us a breakdown of what's inside that bubble by creating a bar chart. So we see, for example, that companies that are domestic, regional traders growing very fast are mostly trading companies, 22% in terms of employment growth, basic metals and fabricated metals, food and beverage companies, and agriculture companies. We can say, well, what countries are they from? Well, we can put, instead of ISIC, we can put country code. The largest number is from Kenya, about 58 companies. The second, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia. So it is companies from these 4 countries that are regional exporters and growing very fast. So again, you can use this mode of analysis to do many types of research. You can look, for example, at what type of companies are benefiting most from incentives. How are they reacting to incentives in terms of new investments, both recently undertaken new investments and planned new investments? How is the economy benefiting from these companies in terms of employment growth, in terms of value addition? You can also do analysis to look at how well is our investment promotion agency performing. You can do an analysis to see what type of companies are using IPA services. You can look at the performance of companies that use IPA services versus performance of companies that do not use IPA services, and see what a difference it makes for a company to use IPAs. A potential investor, for example, in a particular subsector can go in there and analyze its subsector. What are investors in my subsector doing in Africa in terms of growth rates, in terms of capacity utilization? Which new investors have come in the last few years? How much new investment has taken place in the last few years? How fast are they growing? How much new investment are they planning to make? How much incentives are they benefiting from? So a lot of this type of information actual investors can make use of in making investment decisions. We will have a user training manual on the platform that will be available, so users can go there and click on a button, a training button, and get a brief training manual on how to use the platform. Let's then go back to our lesson and talk about some of the results from Africa. What did we learn from the survey by using the monitoring platform about the dynamics of investment in Africa? Now again, I'll be giving very small number of select findings just to give an idea of how the platform can be used. So the first finding I will show is that foreign investment has positive spillovers on domestic firms in other sectors in terms of productivity, but has negative spillovers on firms within the same sector in terms of employment. So what we found is a foreign investor entering a country in a particular subsector generates spillovers, positive spillovers, to domestic companies in allied sectors but other sectors. But in a large number of cases has negative spillovers, in other words, affects in a negative way domestic companies in the same subsector. So the analysis has given us the ability to help IPAs to identify what is going to be the impact of foreign investment coming in various subsectors and how to take precautions to ensure that the positive impacts are maximized and any potential negative impacts are minimized. We've also found that the impact of FDI depends very strongly on the subsector and also by country. So by using the data, an IPA can identify which sectors should be prioritized in terms of investment promotion as sectors that would have the maximum impact on domestic companies. This is a question that a lot of policymakers like to ask. Which sectors should we prioritize? And by using the data and using the monitoring platform, policymakers can identify which sectors should be promoted if we're trying to achieve the maximum impact in terms of development. In some sectors, for example, in the high-tech sector, we find that domestic investors are more dominant than foreign investors and have a more positive impact, and that foreign investors have a more positive impact in the low-tech sectors. In high-tech sectors, in IT, in sophisticated machinery, etc., we were surprised to find that the data revealed that domestic companies, wholly domestic-owned companies, are performing very well. They're very fast growers, their performances are very high, and in some cases, foreign investors are coming in to actually partner with domestic companies to benefit from their high growth and high performance. In more traditional low-tech sectors like textiles, garments, leather, etc., the impact of foreign investment is very positive. Another very interesting finding is that the role of aftercare is very important. 90% of companies that were covered in the survey are planning reinvestments, and 20% are actually planning to expand beyond the country where they're located to the region. So what that tells us is that even though the hardest part of investment promotion is bringing a new investor to the country, there's a lot of new investment that's out there to be mobilized from existing investors. Actually, from the survey database of 6,400 companies, the total new investment that companies are planning to make is in the order of $18 billion. That's $18 billion of new investment that's ready to be made by the companies that we've surveyed, And the IPAs only need to provide services to overcome issues that may prevent those companies from making those investments. So to realize those planned investments, IPAs need to target those companies that have indicated how much new investment they're planning to make and provide the services to those companies to overcome whatever impediments and bottlenecks they are saying may stand in their way to prevent them from realizing those plans. We also find that the employment growth rate and planned new investments is highest among domestic companies that export within their region. This has come up in a number of ways. I showed you one example of how we've identified that. This is a very important finding because this shows that the regional economic commissions or communities, the RECs, have a very important role to play. Because in the case of Africa, at least, we see that if regional trade agreements function properly, if there's more regional trade, domestic companies, domestic investors are going to benefit a lot from that, and there'll be a lot more growth generated by domestic investors, even more than foreign investors. Regional exporters, both foreign and domestic, have the most domestic suppliers. This is also interesting because regional investors are not only the fastest growing investors, they are also the ones with the most impact in terms of backward linkages. They have, as a group, much more domestic suppliers and spend on developing domestic suppliers. So by improving regional trade agreements, we would not only be increasing the speed of development in terms of growth of those companies, but backward growth to the suppliers as well. Investors registered with an investment promotion agency are likely to make more reinvestments than those that are non-registered. We've done a lot of analysis, and it's possible to do much more using the platform to see what is the impact of investment promotion agencies on the performance of investors. And in almost all cases, we see that investors that have worked with IPAs from early on, from even before taking an investment, are making bigger investments, are engaging more local entities, and are having more impact on the local economy, and are actually growing faster than companies that have not registered with or used the services of IPAs. It varies from country to country, and it varies in terms of the nature of the IPA, the level of development of the IPA, and in some cases, from the origin of the investor. All of these various things can be looked at, but overall, the IPAs are having an impact on both investor performance and investor impact on the economy. We've seen that making use of IPA services has an impact on foreign investor performance. We have also published a report that summarizes many of the findings of the survey using both the investment monitoring platform and more rigorous statistical analysis and regression models. And the findings of the survey are summarized in the report. And this report for the African Investor Survey has been launched in early 2012. Let's go to the last section, which is more future-oriented, how the IMP can be used as a tool for partnership promotion. The IMP has a new functionality that's developed and will go public in the next 2 months called BNet, for Business Networking. Companies that participate in the survey will be able to use the monitoring platform to promote themselves. BNet combines some of the useful properties for boosting investment in Africa. So through BNet, companies will effortlessly have a web presence for global visibility. So on the website, investment.unido.org, companies will be able to have a pre-designed website that we've designed for them, and all they need to do is upload their information, their photos, etc., and they have a website, and anybody who's looking for a company with their specification will be able to find them, identify them, and contact them. They will be able to conduct business networking through the UNIDO portal. They will be identified as UNIDO verified players because they've been surveyed. If they exist on the platform, it's a guarantee that this company exists and that they are producing whatever products they're saying they're producing. Eventually, this will grow into a Pan-African directory of active companies as the platform expands and as the number of countries expands. It will be a directory of all African companies. And as the platform expands to other regions, the same thing will go for those other regions. The benefits to the companies, as I said, is ready-to-use websites that can be generated and used. The companies can customize their own online showroom with a variety of layout themes, style sheets, and logos. They can showcase their products and services easily and effectively. They can even use smartphones to access the websites. And easy-to-use search functions for BNet allows users to browse the company offerings and find the company as a business partner. There will also be a mini CRM tool to allow for companies to manage their communication with vendors and customers and partners and use it as a relationship management tool. And these are some of the examples of the types of websites that companies will be able to put up on the UNIDO portal, on the IMP. Now, you may say, well, how does the data actually get on the IMP? How's the data collection system? What kind of data is collected, etc.? I will give a very brief presentation on that, but basically the idea is that the data collection itself is an important part of capacity building because we're not collecting the data by using consultants, but bringing together national entities under a national steering committee consisting of statistics offices, investment promotion agencies, ministries, etc., to actually identify the companies and do the collection. And we have a number of human-based and algorithm-based checks that allows the data quality before it's loaded to the IMP, and then it is through the IMP the data analysis, research, and visualization is conducted for policy formulation, investment promotion, and partnerships promotion. We have created another functionality, survey analysis tool, SANG, which will allow statistics offices to design the surveys, to pull a representative sample from a business directory, to manage the survey process, to manage the data collection and quality check process, to manage the data entry and visualization. And through this SANG tool, we will partner with the statistics offices to improve the efficiency with which data is collected. And this partnership between UNIDO and statistics offices will ensure that the data within the IMP is constantly refreshed, is constantly expanded, and we look forward that within a year or so, The database for the existing 19 countries will go from 7,000 to 12 or 15,000, and hopefully we will expand it to all the countries in Africa. The SANG function, as I said, has the sampling, frame, and methodology, the field structure and workflow flow management, the questionnaire design, data capture and monitoring, and it all comes together for survey creation, processing, and management, which goes to the IMP. And within the IMP, companies benefit from the BNet, and this benefiting from the BNet business network gives the companies reassurance and makes them more cooperative with statistics offices in actually working with them on the survey and giving their data. That's the end of this lesson, and we look forward to seeing you in the next lesson when we go more deep into the SPX component for linking foreign investors and domestic companies to ensure that the impact of foreign investment is maximized. Thank you very much.